Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my live broadcast. I'm Heather Carlisle, and this evening the topic that I'm introducing and sharing with you is about the different styles that we have about self-sabotage. And each one of us, in a certain way, gets in our own way because we're not perfect and life is for growth. So we, through ignorance or injury, in some way or another, we keep ourselves from moving forward in life. And as is most often, whatever it is that is getting in our way, that lesson started way, way, way back in our childhood. And so I want to talk about the styles of self-sabotage, where they came from, what they look like, and then some of the ideas about what to do to avoid self-sabotage and to become more successful in life. And I, as always, am most interested in a conversation with you since I am live, and I'd love to hear your comments and your questions whenever you have one. So, and even if it isn't specifically on the topic of self-sabotage, that's why I'm here, to listen to your questions and to have a conversation with you in the most constructive way. So, self-sabotage really has to do with, and this is, I'm talking about this in the most specific way, personal power or empowerment. And that means having power over, therefore having an ability to move things or change things. And the scale of the saboteur has to do with, how do I master myself? How do I utilize, wield, express my opinions, my needs, my desires, my wants, and take action on my own account or the account of those people or those situations or causes or ideals that matter to me. How successful am I? So at the highest level of that, I call it the champion. And then down at the bottom level, it's the saboteur. And so if we're talking about power, that means that we want to wield it artfully. And art, the one word definition of art is choice. Because I decide, so then I have mastery over myself and I get to choose how I spend my power, my energy, my thoughts, my time, my resources. And the more successful I am at that, spending my power in an effective manner, the less I sabotage myself. The more I pour my power, my time, my energy, myself down the drain, the more I'm sabotaging my abilities and my goodness. So thank you for tuning in, and ask me any question anytime. I like the metaphor that we use when we teach parenting classes about the movement in early childhood where we behave somewhat like a dog. You know, a dog is a pack animal. We're all together in the family. There's usually a leader or somebody, kind of a pecking order, but we're all together. This is us. And then at a certain point, we move from that into adolescence, where we become more like cats, where I'm not a part of the crowd. I'm going to individuate. I'm going to be myself, and I'm going to be true to myself. So that point, as we all know, is a very amorphous, undefinable, and creative, moving transformation, going from the belongingness like a pack animal to the family into personal identity of the teenager individuating and finding themselves as an individual. And so what we want to do is we want to empower our kids and therefore our people into managing themselves, their minds, their words, their actions, their energies, to maximize their success in expressing themselves in a constructive manner and in life, contributing to the world in a constructive manner. So that means in childhood, what we want is to empower, to teach, to inspire our little ones to be self-regulated so that we're not having to say, do that, don't do that. This is what happens when you're not self-regulated, and this is what happens when you do. We want them to get it. And that means the earlier we begin this process of assisting an individual to make good choices, to regulate for success, the easier it is as life unfolds. And you and I know that there are parents who don't have techniques or methods or creativity about that empowerment, teaching a child to self-regulate. And lots of reasons for that. Lots of ways a child refuses to self-regulate and is successful at avoiding it. And then the parent is unsuccessful at empowering that child. So if you have any examples of that, I'd love to hear it. And I know it's sometimes quite troublesome when our young people want power, and yet the way they regulate their own power is ineffective or even destructive to themselves or others. So the well-behaved child is what we're looking for. And of course, this then grows up to an adult who isn't well-behaved or successful. This falls under the general heading in my mind of self-mastery, where I know myself and I know how to spend my mind and my words and my behavior so that it's for a constructive use, hopefully for myself and the people around me in my life. And that means that when we self-regulate, it's not too much and it's not too little. It's not too aggressive and it's not too passive. And that is an art form that we use throughout life. And it's nice when we get to the place where we do it in a dance, a graceful way. Do I say something here or do I not? Or do I say a little bit or a lot? How fast do I go or how much do I hold back? So this is about behavior, mostly about behavior, and you know it starts with how we think, of course. So this is I'm working from one of my models about early childhood development and the stages that our kids naturally go through, and we want to know how to foster them successfully there. So we've got the sabotaged child, and that child is either overindulged or overpunished. And sometimes that means that the parents don't have a concept of motivation, which has to do with autonomy, mastery, and meaning. They have a concept that's old-fashioned about reward and punishment. And as Daniel Pink says in his book on motivation called Drive, the carrot and the stick mostly pretty much don't work. Because if we're self-conscious, we gauge ourselves how to manipulate the situation, being willing to take a punishment or really not caring about the reward. So the motivation that really works is, first of all, autonomy. And this starts right in the terrible twos, doesn't it? Where a child learns to say no and says, no, I want my autonomy to reject this or to go for this. So the overindulged child then becomes passive and self-indulgent, which means they can't, they don't have a good ability to share, or be empathetic with others, or to take their turn. Passive, which means they don't try, they don't push through, they don't really challenge themselves to get something, or keep on keeping on, or even fight for what they want. They're unmotivated, which means they haven't been usually connected enough with their sense of self-confidence, or that life is fair. If life isn't fair, why take action? Because it's a wasted effort. Or because they don't matter to anybody, and then they're not motivated by even believing that they can get love. So that is one of the things of deepest concern to me, is when I encounter someone who is sincerely and severely unmotivated. In essence, the circumstances of their life haven't given them the ability to believe that they can get what they want. And so they give up. And so they're not motivated. And that concerns me deeply. Sometimes the more passive children who are too indulged or too entitled become comfort-seeking or lazy, or they're not really attached to their excitement and wanting to go for something and having the faith in themselves or connection with the things that they love to rise up with their full energy and enthusiasm and to go for it. And that's squashing the life, squashing the energy, not fully alive, not fully enthusiastic, not connected with creative energy, not being able to move forward on the account of the things that they really want, or assuming that people are going to bring it to them, and maybe people serving them so that they don't find the experience of how exciting it is to decide they want something and then to really go for it and get it. So that's the child that is too indulged and therefore becomes passive. The other side of this child that is not self-regulated, not taught to be self-regulated, is the child that's too punished or aggressive, in the sense that the child has been given a harsh discipline and judgment, and they pull back and don't believe that they can get what they need and use their power to be successful, or they then become aggressive and overly competitive because it isn't just a natural connection in them to know that they can be successful unless they do battle with somebody or something. They can then become critical, criticizing of themselves and others. They can be too hard on themselves. They can ridicule themselves or ridicule others. This is if they weren't shown the ability on how to use their power and get what they want or be successful. So then that's the indulged or the punished child, the child that's squashed, or when they have the excitement and the energy to go for what they want, and they're squashed by whoever it is, not giving them the support they need to go for it. And so then they fight against and don't regulate themselves because they just have anger and reject the structure or the choices, and don't have the ability to stop and think it through and regulate themselves to succeed, because they've now given up on the hope that they can succeed or the belief that they can succeed. Any thoughts on these? Any examples that you have from your own life or the people that you have around you? Okay, so then the wisely regulated child. This is the child that is well behaved, that has learned about self-control. So in childhood, when this is the case, it becomes a power struggle because the child doesn't feel that they have a choice. And then they want to get their choice and their power to be able to um, take action and move in the direction of their own desire. So one of the things that helps us learn self-regulation is structure, um, um, regulated habits. Like, you know this, if you help a child brush their teeth so many nights in a row, if you help a child practice the piano so many nights in a row, if you help a child do math homework so many nights in a row, sooner or later, that's the pattern. And they self-regulate and don't fight against it. And if you can make it fun and curious, interesting, and learning, they're going to be interested in doing it and therefore bring their energy, bring their attention to the table. But if you don't stay with the child and help them feel what it's like to be self-regulated, help them plant those patterns in their brain, in their unconscious thinking or unconscious mind or unconscious brain, then they don't get that patterning and that self-regulation system that's set up for them, which will last them then a lifetime. So we want them to have and to see the adults with daily disciplines, as I said, like just like brushing your teeth, doing the dishes, turning the lights out when you leave a room, putting the table back after a game, consistent limits, which is this is the way we do it in our house, and this is how we do it, and we don't go past or we don't renege on it. Boundaries, which is like limits, where this is how we do it, and the adults set that up so that the child gets a sense of, these are the standards. This is a decent or a good or superlative lifestyle, and this is what it feels like, and we do it, and I do it. This sometimes takes quite a bit of creative energy, where a parent sets up choices, creative choices that are attractive to the child at that age of development, but don't go past the standards and the boundaries of the family. And so then you set the child up with those so that they do have a choice, and they're all good choices. Mentoring to help them think through some of the bigger choices as time moves on. Providing order so that if they have order in their life, then they enjoy order, it feels good, it feels like who they are, and they will create order, therefore, wherever they go in the world. Options, as I said, consequences for when the self-regulation isn't there and you go past the boundary or past the order or past the self-regulation, the consequences don't feel good. Not that they're punishments. It's just like, ooh, I don't like that as much as I like this. So that the consequences are set up by adults to make sure kids aren't harmed or insulted or disrespected. And at the same time, they're saying, okay, I think I'd rather do that. Also, along with this, in terms of empowering ourselves to be self-regulated, and I'm specifically talking about childhood now, because if we set it up with our little ones, it's in the unconscious brain, and it's like a second nature to them. It lasts a lifetime, and they don't have to struggle when they get older with trying to figure out how to be disciplined enough, how to control themselves, how to use their power, how to be a champion. If you do it young, they've got the skill, and they don't even remember where they got it because the adults are so creative and astute that they've put it in place for them. And that part of that means mentoring and planning, and sitting down and talking through and using pictures and adventures and family activities to experience talking about the goal and what we're going to do to get there, to reach that goal, what it's like to plan and imagine, and then to pick the strategies of, well, we could do it this way or we could do it that way, to create good habits. And oftentimes, when we have children, it helps us because we want to be good role models, of course, we want to give them the best. It helps us become better self-regulated. It helps us let go of bad habits and create better ones. When you have a child, you stop drinking and smoking, and even though it was a bad habit, out of love for your child, it motivates us to be better self-regulated. So then what's a child that has learned self-regulation? What's that like inside of them? They do have self-control. They do make good decisions. They make careful and intelligent choices because they know what they're doing. They have the ability to be not too loose and not too tight. They have the ability to be private, where they know how far they're going to regulate, and also then to be social and connected, so that it's a respectful thing how they choose to use their energy, their words, their space, their actions, so that they don't cross somebody else's boundaries, because they respect privacy and they respect their own privacy, as well as, when it's appropriate, open and social and connected and free, because they feel successful and confident. They've learned as a self-regulated child to make decisions about self-limiting. Well, it's close to curfew. If we leave now, I'll get home well ahead of time and feel good about myself. Good judgment. No, I'm not going to go in that car with them because that's sleazy, or I know they get out of control, or I don't feel respected over there. No, I'm not going to do that. Timely. The structure of, yeah, I leave home at this time and I'm always 5 minutes early to school. How many of us have a struggle with timeliness? Because it wasn't given to us when we were little. It doesn't come naturally, and it needs to be put in place before you're 10 years old, where you begin the elementary steps of that. And yet when you have those elementary steps in place, it's so simple to build and build and build on top of that. Timely and responsible. So that's a description, general description, from how I think about self-sabotage versus success and becoming a champion. So the styles of self-sabotage, of course, it's endless, right? But if we're looking specifically at adults and how we keep ourselves from being successful, self-disciplined, self-regulated, a champion, there are some really obvious ones about how we use or misuse our power. So there is the saboteur, the self-sabotage, that's the passive and the indulgent. And then there's the one that's aggressive and too tight. So I think about it as too loose and too tight, where we're hanging on to our power, or we just don't care and let our power go. And there's a continuum then of one side, again, is too loose, where it's the entitled, indulgent, passive saboteur, where this person just doesn't hold on to their power. They let it go. And then there's the too tight, and this person is oftentimes very controlling, sometimes a punisher, punish themselves or others, and an aggressive saboteur, where they demand and they fight and get dominating to take what they want, and not really sensitive to being respectful of other people's ability to have their own success. So if we look at the passive one is the one who is indulgent. That's, it's tragic, it's sad, like the couch potato, um, the person who is entitled, unmotivated, comfort seeking, and they are too loose. And it's often, I think, more difficult to empower and create a champion or a success out of that person that refuses to hold on to their power, where they just let it slip through their fingers. And it takes a while for them to learn to hang on and then to decide how they're going to wield it artfully. And with those passive types, one of the things that I recommend that's easily definable at any rate is exercise, where instead of experiencing their passive energy physically, they begin to experience strong definition, strong muscle, ability to really move physically, and that somewhere along the line they disconnected from all their physical strength. And what we want to do is get them to really tighten and feel the strength that they have to hang on and to not back down, not give up, not wimp out. And then, of course, we've got the aggressive, dominating personality that fights and is controlling. And they are usually very tight with their self-discipline, and they put down other people for not being as tight or as disciplined or as strong or aggressive as they are. And then they just run roughshod over the people who aren't willing to live life in this, this battle that they set up. Then there's the wisely regulated champion. So this person knows what they're doing, and they have a real sense of when to move and when to relax, when to make sure they've got enough energy and how to spend their energy, and then to set it up with planning and strategies so that their energy is used for the utmost success and efficiency. So that means if you want to develop more of yourself instead of sabotaging yourself, you want to do things like beginning to set it up so that you have regulated habits and daily disciplines that are true to you. You want to get mentoring, you want to set up your boundaries, and don't think about it as just having to do the entire thing all at once. But if you think you're a little too passive, find a way to bring energy into your day, into your life that you like, something that motivates you. So I'm going to talk about the 6 styles of self-sabotage now that you've got the big picture of that and how it develops in us. And viewers, thank you for tuning in. I know you're there, and if you have something to say or ask, I'm always interested to hear from you because it makes it fun being a live broadcast. Okay, we have these 6 types of the what I call saboteur archetype, which is lacking the ability for self-direction and success. So we've got these 6 types: procrastination, stopping short, rebelling, risking, indulgence, and punishing. So I'm going to look at those 6 ways that we sabotage ourselves, our ability to be self-directed, and a champion in terms of our own success. First of all, procrastination. When we procrastinate, we postpone our major decisions and our commitments, or we postpone even minor things or things that we don't like, And people who procrastinate in a certain way can evade permanence, where they haven't got the structure set up so that it's a nice solid foundation and they can trust it and stand on it. If they procrastinate, they just don't set that up for themselves. And it's an insecure spot. Um, they don't like to engage, because if if you're really engaged, you're holding tension, you're holding energy. And if you procrastinate, you just kind of stand around the sidelines and don't engage. Don't make something happen. Don't make yourself move or be successful. They avoid seriousness. A procrastinator may feel guilt, but they also avoid seriousness, because someone who's really serious, devoted, and sincere about something, they can't procrastinate. They they want to be responsible for whatever it is that's their part, and they show up and do it. The procrastinators don't keep trying out possibilities, and they don't fully engage. So that means pulling out, pulling out, pulling energy out, pulling energy out, and not being in the flow of life. Shutting down certain parts of themselves, certain parts of their power, avoiding it. And if you can keep your mind distracted in certain ways with trivia, you can avoid doing just about anything, even for a loved one. You can just kind of watch life go by and watch your self-sabotage affect other people as well. So the procrastinator then is the classic person who is passive, too loose, not engaging. They may be very busy. They may be very involved with certain things and I watch myself do that sometimes. I'll get busy on something, especially if I'm tired, that takes low energy, and it's repetitive, something maybe I like to do. And one of my favorite ones, of course, is playing with my photographs, because I love my photography. I can avoid something that's heavier and takes more of my energy, may be a bigger priority, because I just don't want to deal with it and procrastinate by playing with editing my photographs. I watch myself do that. Although the part of me that's very responsible usually won't tolerate that for very long. So we can procrastinate, and we're very occupied, very busy with something or other, just not the major priorities that in some way or another we want to just not look at and avoid. Any of you guys have examples of self-sabotage or procrastination? Most of us do it in one way or another. Stopping short is the next style of self-sabotage. So stopping short is we work hard up to a point, but stubbornly keep our efforts just below the threshold necessary for success or completion. So have you ever encountered that in yourself or someone else, where they do real well, get certain amounts done, moving forward, and then dribble out at the end, or get procrastinated or distracted, and just leave whatever project it is and don't finish it? That can be a pattern where we just get distracted and move on to something else, like someone who has ADD. Or it can be other things, such as I remember someone who, it was very sad, he would sabotage himself very quickly and very effectively whenever he started to get success. Um, and I worked with this young man many years ago, and it was so dynamic, I could never forget him. He had, goodness knows where it came from. I never met his dad. But his father, the way he was parented, was abusive in terms of criticizing him, insulting him, telling him that he was good for nothing and that he'd never amount to anything. He didn't have what it takes. I don't know where such abuse would come from, but it was there. And it, that kind of abuse does come from somewhere, usually in the person's past. So this boy took it to heart. And when he became a man himself, that litany of those insults and put-downs that he got from his dad, he was still feeling it and hearing it. And he was quite bright and very capable. And his wife told various stories how he would get in a new job and he would be great, because he was a very sincere young man. He would be great, he would do good work, and when it got to the point where he was going to go to the next level, he was going to get a raise, he was going to another level of responsibility or leadership, he would do something to just cut it off and sabotage his own success. And he did this over and over and over in his life. And so then they came to see me for counseling, and that's what we did. We attached this sincere, very capable young man's self-sabotage directly back to all of those messages that were so poisonous from his dad. So this man was stopping short as a style, as a lifestyle, because he was consciously or unconsciously being obedient to the messages that he had gotten so young that he could never succeed, he could never achieve. And we went on and made a lot of headway once we figured that one out. But that's an example of stopping short. Sometimes we stop short because something or other inside of us doesn't want to succeed beyond a certain level. Sometimes we stop short because, well, this is just take a little bit too much energy, too much hard work, too much time, too much effort. It wouldn't be so easy as coming up to that point, and then just move on to a different project that's easier or more appealing. And then, in essence, don't follow through like an adult would with commitment and responsibility to push through that piece and to complete a project, just stopping short and abandoning. So that's another style of self-sabotage. There's rebelling. So some people sabotage their success with rebellion. They aggressively strike out at the world and go against authority. And I'll get them before they get me attitude. They refuse to comply with demands instead of seeing them as opportunities to explore their strengths against a standard. So rebelling, isn't that a nice definition I have? And that in a certain way is, I want my power and you can't make me. I want my power and I won't let you take it. I want my power and I'm not going to use it on your account. I'm going to use it, I'm going to push against you and not succeed, which is in essence a power and control issue, right? I'm going to refuse to be a success because it might please you or it might give you something and I'm not willing to give you something. So that's one way that we sabotage ourselves out of spite or against authority. And of course, probably that person was too squashed or too punished or manipulated by a parent or an authority figure in their life. I think so often that, yes, we have rebellion in adolescence, but I don't think that we would have the rebellion in as severe a way as we do if our parents understood more about what teenagers need and set them up to learn and experience and explore, provided, of course, they were taught to self-regulate when they were younger than 10 years old. Um, Someone types and asked, would you say that definition again, please? Thank you for asking. Absolutely. And this is from my, my handout, which I call The Habits of Fear and Coping Mechanisms. And so this has to do with the saboteur archetype, which lacks ability for self-direction and success. And thanks for asking. Okay, so this is about rebelling. They aggressively strike out at the world and go against authority. And I'll get them before they get me attitude. They refuse to comply with standards instead of seeing them as opportunities to explore their strengths against a standard. So they don't want somebody else's standards. They want tight control, and they're going to push against the standard because the standard wasn't set up to give them adequate respect and opportunity, right? So we see this from the previous generation everywhere, where that old generation was invested in power and control, a reward and punishment, and they set up those standards to say you have to do this or you're going to be punished, rather than setting up the standards saying this is the excellent way to do it. Now, there are all different ways that we can behave, and I'll give you an opportunity to try them and look what happens when you do the excellent thing. And then an experience of really substantial success. It's like, wow, this works, you know? And the metaphor I'm thinking of is like a sailing crew on a sailboat, where we have certain standards and this is how we do it. And if you work within our standards in our system, the way we've experimented over the years, and you slot into the team and you meet the standard of doing that, then you experience how thrilling it is to be on a boat that's powerful and beautiful, and everybody works together, and it's you feel good about being on the team and doing your part. So then the fourth type of self-sabotage, looking at my time here, is risking. Now, risking, right? There, as is typical, we've got a part, an end of the continuum where people are risk averse and they're afraid to take risks. Then we've got the other end, the aggressive part, where people take risks and lose out or do damage. What we want, of course, is in the middle here, where we get success, where we're willing to take a certain number of risks but not have it cost us. And we're willing to be careful with what risks we take so that we end up with a championship and a success. So this definition is energetic and impulsive. People who have problems with risking and sabotaging themselves with risking habitually take unnecessary risks that minimize success and often ensure their own defeat. They would rather fail in a blaze of glory than succeed through patient effort. And so those are the risk takers who want glamour and sound and fury and drama and charisma and fame rather than success. They just want all the fireworks, right? So they'll take risks to manipulate in a certain way for an agenda rather than really sincerely being excited about succeeding at something. So of course, That's the risking. And then, as I said before, there's the not risking too, where people are too afraid to step out, they're too cautious, even paranoid, that they're not going to do anything that hasn't been done before. They're not going to do anything that goes outside of this nice little tight structure, and they're just going to stay in here and refuse to do anything that's not completely predictable. And that's, I was talking with a dear colleague today. She has just left a large firm, an attorney's firm, a large, reputable, wonderful firm, and she's taken the risk to go out into her own private practice as a lawyer. And, that's her taking a risk. She's not under the umbrella of this large company with all of these attorneys. She's going it on her own. And I'm so proud of her because she's very astute about that. She's done years and years of work where people like me trust her. So I'm excited for her taking that kind of a risk. And that was, for her, a very carefully planned risk. So we want to be able to take risks and not too much, right? Then the 5 out of 6 styles of self-sabotage I'm talking about tonight is the indulgent. So here's about the indulgent. The chief characteristics are passivity or lack of initiative and their disengagement with others and life. Maybe comfort-seeking, entitled, self-medicating, addicted, or self-indulgent. They are avoidant or refusing to participate. I'll never forget working with a teenager, a young teenager, many years ago. And I won't forget him because I was so afraid for him. I made a little headway, thank goodness, but he had been so violated in certain ways, especially by his dad, that he just gave up. He gave up everything. And he'd been around people who smoked, so he started that. And then, of course, he started with illegal drugs. And by the time his mom brought him to me, he'd been doing illegal drugs, he'd been in jail, and there wasn't really anything in life he wanted. Nothing motivated him. He had become so passive that it's like, whatever, that I don't think he even cared whether he lived or died. And so that degree of passivity is deeply concerning for me. I want people to be connected with a desire, connected with things that they care about, so that they never get that passive, so that they don't completely give up. And so that it's easier for me to work with someone who's too tight to help them loosen up than it is for somebody who is very, very passive to get them to tighten themselves up. And I know that when I was in my 50s, I'd been working too much and not exercising enough, and I'd lost a lot of muscle mass. And so I had to work with a personal trainer for almost 3 years to strengthen myself and tighten myself, because I naturally am the more passive type than the aggressive type. And the struggle that it took to find a way to hold on, to find a way to get tighter. It's difficult. And I would want you, if you find yourself being too passive, first of all, to find a way to define yourself in terms of your body and your musculature so that you can tighten your muscles and be strong and to hang on, not let go. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Any worries about that you have, or somebody that you know? So, that passive stuff, that can get so easily into addiction, because addiction numbs us out and relaxes us and takes us even farther out of life. And then once we find somebody who is addicted, all they care about then is their quote unquote drug of choice. So that's a very powerful and very sad way that we have of sabotaging ourselves and our success. The last kind of self-sabotage is punishing. This is the definition of this is, and this is the hold on too tight, right? This is the stiffly self-disciplined people. They stiffly self-discipline themselves. They are obedient to an internalized critical parent who whips them to succeed, a harsh judgment of the self to the detriment of their life balance. So this is, I'm going to succeed at all costs, and I'm useless or ineffective or powerless or less admirable person if I'm not a success. So I have to whip myself into being the best of the best, the most perfect of the most perfect. And of course, these people, because they're so bent on this stringent definition they have of success, where they will drive anything through there, that definition of success is usually too narrow, and they push themselves too hard. They lose other things in life, and therefore they sabotage their lifestyle. Sometimes they sabotage their health because they've got this punishing part of themselves where they're whipping themselves into being overachievers. And I'm sure you've seen this. When something comes along for them to do that's new or adventurous or playful or creative, this self-punishing person, that internalized critical parent at the back of their head that says, you have to do this perfectly or you're inadequate. They don't try new things unless they set it up so that they do it perfect right from the very beginning. And so they've held on so tight they have to have power over everything that they can't make a mistake. They don't know how to deal with that. Or they can't be less than number one. They can't be part of the team that's moving forward with persistence and can-do attitude to see if they can succeed. No, they have to succeed or they won't even try. So they pull out their energy completely and then they put it stiffly on what they demand and that they know they can control completely. So, does that make sense, you guys? Those are the general areas of power and control about how we sabotage ourselves. Any questions before I close off for tonight? Self-sabotage is a hard thing for us to look at. And of course, classically, we're so aware of addiction, so aware of people who use things to sabotage themselves and their life and their honor. When I think about addiction, it concerns me profoundly. And one of the things that I recently asked my doctor about is, what is it that's hardest for us? And I was asking her about women. And it came out that there were 3 things. Losing weight, drinking too much, and emotional relationship communication problems with their loved ones. So, isn't that interesting? Eating, drinking, loving. And those are the most basic things that any one of us needs. And then we sabotage ourselves with eating too much or eating too little. We sabotage ourselves with drinking too much. And we sabotage our loving relationships because we don't know how to handle that with, just think about all the elements that we've talked about tonight that have to do with power and control. too passive, or too aggressive, and how to set up us and our children for um, healthy self-regulation. So we have enough self-discipline, enough ability to choose wisely, and we have enough freedom so that we can relax. And so just think about how we get into eating too much. It's because we aren't relaxing well enough. We aren't taking care of, we're feeding ourselves, in essence, food, because we're not feeding ourselves other things that keep us successful and a champion. Same thing with drinking or alcohol or drugs or something like that. If we're using that, we're trying to check out, trying to get passive, or, there are some drugs that keep you very active as well. And again, that's about, are we self-regulating in terms of getting quality of life rather than just self-stimulating, in other words, stimulating our own sensory system. And of course, then the passive and aggressive behaviors that we have in relationships. Instead of having the skill to talk sincerely about things and figure out how to work it out in a respectful way, using power and control to try and control the other person, manipulate them, to force them to do what we want them to do, or threaten them to get them to do what we want them to do. And so it's interesting when I got that information, how it's directly connected to the self-sabotage and what our parents gave us and didn't give us. Oh, I have a comment. Eat, drink, and be merry. Heather, I'd like to hear you talk about little addictions sometime. For me, it's the little addictions I have the most trouble with. The little addictions. Yeah, because you're probably a pretty responsible person, and you just sneak in little things to take care of yourself because you're not getting the fully high quality ones that you really need for a good lifestyle. And I'm sure that many of us have, if we watch ourselves, have these little addictions. Now, sometimes these little addictions aren't too bad, and it's just a way of us getting a little stress relief. I've spoken before about how addiction starts on a continuum with we're not going to use anything, and then we go farther and farther. It becomes a habit, and then a need, and then a compulsion, and then an addiction, and then we end up sabotaging our entire life to get that need met, to get that fix. So like a little addiction could be that you're not able to have a cup of coffee without a cigarette. And, it doesn't seem to be hurting anybody, but it's not good for you. Let's see. I'm not an overeater, nor an alcoholic, nor an angry person, but those areas of my life I think need some work. So glad this is anonymous. I am too, because, people that type the most vulnerable and honest comments and questions to me, it makes this a very valuable dialogue in my experience, and oftentimes you tell me so as well. But you said, but those areas of my life I think need some work. And if we really look at that honestly and really look intelligently at what's going on there when we have those kinds of things, we just haven't got the methods. We don't have role models who are living a healthy, happy, exciting, and quality of life. Not that it's exciting all the time, we don't have the energy for that. But when we get into too many of those little things, I know that there's something missing. And whatever it is that's missing, each one of us needs to know ourselves well enough to know what it is. Like right now, I know that I'm getting stressed a little too much because I'm missing my sewing machine. The there's something that just the world falls away when I'm with my sewing machine working on something, even if it's just hemming slacks. Me and my sewing machine, there's something that's quality there, keeps my hands busy. I'm doing something that's valuable, and it's a break. It's a nice break. So, and I do have a list. I'm going to do some this week. But I know myself. I want you to know yourself so well that you know what's missing. And sometimes it's like, well, I need to work out, but I've got this and this and this and this. And I don't get enough sleep as it is. So then, it's like someone we were talking about recently. She works for a large company. She parks her car way at the end of the parking lot. And she walks all the way to the building, and she walks up the stairs to her office. She may not have time to get to the gym, but that's one of the things that she's set up as a self-disciplined pattern every day, where she gets to really work her leg muscles on that trek. So let's see. Thank you, Heather. Gotta go. Yes, we do gotta go. Our time is up. And so I'd like you to think about what it is that's missing in your life if you're using those little addictions, little treats, little stopgaps for what it is that you need in order to feel good in your life so that you don't self-sabotage yourself. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I love giving these live broadcasts, especially when I know I've got people who are actively interested and in this dialogue with me. So I look forward to our conversation next week, and good night.